Hey everyone, I'm Rick Doherty, host of Tall Guy Talks Travel, joined once again by my amazing co-host, Sarah Says. Sarah, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
So, this was an episode that originally I had planned to record with my other co-host, Maz. I was like, okay, it's the 35th anniversary of Dick Tracy, the movie. This was a bizarre movie with a lot of like bizarre behind the scenes, like even not the movie itself, but what went on around the making
Right.
of this movie. There was so much of a story around this movie that I thought, okay, I can do an episode with Maz. And that episode has aired. But since then, Sarah was like, that's one of my five favorite movies of all time.
Yep.
And I had no idea. So I'm like, well, I'm up for talking about Dick Tracy again and doing another episode on it. So we are back talking about the great 1990 film Dick Tracy. The first thing I want to discuss with you before you get into why you like it so much is what struck me as so odd that I know it's a Touchstone Pictures movie, so it's not
Right.
technically the Disney moniker. But this movie is raunchy
Yes.
and violent.
So violent. Well, for this kind of movie, yeah.
And the combination of those two things to be a Disney movie that was promoted so heavily by the company, yes, it was Touchstone. Like that was weird. Like you are a fan of this movie because you saw it presumably right around when it came out. I saw it right around when it came out. I was 10, you're younger than me.
Yeah, I was, let's see, 90. So it was 10, 90. I was six. I was six, probably 6, 7 years old and
Could
saw it in
you
theaters.
imagine now as a parent?
I would, you know, thinking about my son, 6, 7 years old, I would never take him to see this movie in theaters, but my parents did.
I mean, Disney did a great job of it's an intellectual property that parents knew at the time because they grew up with the Dick Tracy cartoon strip, and it was a lot of actors that they knew and trusted, and then Disney was promoting it. So I could understand why our parents were like, "Oh, this is safe for them."
Absolutely.
But some of Madonna's lines in this movie,
Right?
like there's innuendo and then there's just saying it. And
Well,
she's
exactly.
just saying it in this
Yeah,
movie.
but she was perfect for the role, so it's like, but whew.
100% perfect for the role. I think, frankly, the first thing we should get to is how surprising it was that she was so good at this role. I said when I was talking to Maz, nobody else could have played this. And I mean, 1986, Madonna couldn't have played this.
No.
1998, Madonna couldn't have played this. Like, this had to be 1990s Madonna, early 90s Madonna. And she did the song so well. She brought all of that. So, there's like a difference in an actor or an actress being like sexy and being attractive. Like,
Right.
and she had that sexy thing. Maybe she was sexier than she was attractive. And this happens both sides of the gender. Like,
Hmm.
um, it is definitely a phenomenon, right? But she brought all of that energy and then she played the pinup, even though this movie was supposed to take place in the 30s, like the pinup 40s, 50s model thing. And she did the song well, even though she's not like the world's best singer.
Right.
Everything about this, she just brought it.
She did. It's like I literally could not imagine anybody else playing that part at that time. Like it wouldn't have been the right fit. And I mean, I love Madonna in like a league of their own. But that, like you said, that Madonna could not be this Madonna. Like it could not be Breathless Mahoney because yeah, it just fell right at that perfect time of where she is, what she looked like, how she acted, her whole just everything was that character in like real life.
And this movie has strong musicals vibes, even
Yes.
though it's not really a musical. There's only a couple of songs in it. I mean,
Right.
it did win Best Original Song for Sooner or Later, I Always Get My Man. And they performed that song like 6 times in the movie.
Right.
But even though it's not a musical, you still have Mandy Patinkin, you have songs by Stephen Sondheim. It's visually looks like a musical, like maybe that
Oh yeah.
adaptation of Chicago that we got a few years ago. So, do you think this movie played a part in your love of musicals? Or do you think that your love of musicals is one of the reasons that you love this movie so much?
I don't know. I've never really thought about it being tied to my love of musicals because I feel like I didn't have a love of musicals back then. It wasn't really my thing yet. I'd give it a couple years and it was. I feel like I was drawn to the movie for different reasons at the time. Like the songs, and like you said, they repeat that same song and little pieces of that song in the club and things like that throughout the entire movie. Um, but I honestly, I don't think it really affected it either way. I mean, looking at it now as an adult, I'm like, oh, actually, like as an adult, I can totally see why it's still like it has that child nostalgia for me because I loved it so much as a child and I've loved it my whole life. I was like, but now looking at it through an adult's eyes, it's like, oh, I do really love the musical. Then it's like, oh, but I also really do love Broadway. So it's like kind of that intermingling now that I have the love of both things.
So, what is it about this movie that you think it's stuck with you so much throughout the years?
Yeah, so I do have to tell a really funny story that as the little sister, I'm the little sister in our family. So my sister hates this movie. She to this day will not watch this movie because at the beginning, one of the guys gets cement shoes and dumped into the lake, or I think it's like the lake or the river, or whatever. My sister ran out of the movie theater, and she's 5 years older than me, or 4 years older than me, excuse me. And she ran out of the movie theater and sat in the lobby the whole movie, but I would not leave. So I'm like, oh, is part of it because like spite is a little sister, like, I really like this movie because my sister hates it. But to this day, if it is on TV, if there's a mention of it, she's like, nope, nope. So it just kills me. But I really think as a child, what I really loved the comic book style of the movie. I was really drawn to the character of Dick Tracy because he had these cool gadgets. I mean, my goal in life was to have a watch communicator that I could talk into, and I got one. I had one, and I made everyone play Dick Tracy with me, and I was Dick Tracy. And I feel like just the whole aesthetic of that character. And also, it's visually, even as a child, it was so visually like enticing to see. It's such a cool, it's like they use the same colors you would see in a comic, kind of like you see now in certain Marvel or DC, and they change the color palettes based on that character. They really did that in this movie as well. So it has vivid colors, but then it also has these gritty textures. And I mean, yes, there are of course parts of it when I was a kid that just absolutely terrified me, like some of the mobsters. I just, which now as I know as an adult, who these like really famous people were who were playing these mobsters, which I had no idea. But now it's like, yeah, I just feel like everything wrapped together. But yeah, it was just the aesthetic. It was how cool Dick Tracy was and the cool things that he had. I really like the kid as well. That character just as a kid, I was like, I want to be that kid. I know he's like this homeless, like street rat kid, but at the same time, I'm like, I could be Dick Tracy's sidekick. And later he was in Hook, which was another movie I remember seeing in theaters too. My sister sat in the theater for that whole movie though, so that's okay.
So when you talk about the visuals of this movie, I think that is the thing that surprised me the most. It won Best Art Direction. It won 3 Academy Awards. It won for the song, Best Makeup, and Best Art Direction. And some of the outdoor scenes, I thought it was so brilliant how they would wet down the road so that whatever
Yes.
lights that they wanted to project would change the entire color palette of everything you were seeing on screen. And then when you contrasted it with not just Dick Tracy's very strong, vibrant yellow with the black stripe, but the other
Yes.
police officers also had these solid trench coats with a black stripe. The way that they contrasted the color and the way that they made the colors just pop off the screen, it was really, really good. I remember this when I saw it as a kid, and I think you think of some of the things like Little Face and how he's cheesy, and
Hmm.
Paul Servino as Lips, and you're like, okay, this is a
Right?
little bit much. But then when you go back and you're like, oh, this was the aesthetic they were trying to accomplish.
Hmm.
Wow, did they really, really do a good job? And then one of the other things is this is like the 27 Yankees of casts.
It really is. It's amazing, like to remember who is in it and watching it as an adult and recognizing these actors. I mean, Kathy Bates is in this movie. She has a small part in it, but she is in this movie. I mean, Catherine O'Hara is in this movie. Dustin Hoffman, like you said, Paul Sorvino's in it. It's like everybody was in this movie, and a lot of them you wouldn't realize because of the makeup. I mean, like you said, like Paul Sorvino's lips, his whole face is just like smushed. And then Dustin Hoffman, his character, like I never would have no idea. And even now, it's like there's times as I'm watching and I like get IMDb up because I'm like, wait, who played that character again? Like, why is that person familiar?
And one of the things that I didn't like about this is they kind of wasted some of the characters. They kind of wasted some of these big actors. One of the things that really stood out to me was that first scene where Big Boy Caprice kind of takes over by having everybody else killed.
Right.
They show Catherine O'Hara as Texie Garcia
Mhm.
for like 30 seconds. Why are you going to go get Catherine O'Hara?
Well, that's true. But if you think about it, that has like there's a lot of movies that have little cameos like that. Like going back to Hook, how I mentioned Charlie Korsmo was in Hook. Glenn Close is in that movie for all of 2 minutes, dressed like a man pirate, and she's the one who ends up in the boo box. And it's like, what? It's like that's Glenn Close. So it's interesting. Like I see what you mean by saying, that it was this wasted talent, but at the same time, you it's like, oh, did they want to be it because of who was tied to it to get like, oh, I get a little part in this movie.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, but I know one of the things that Disney somewhat, but really Warren Beatty in particular, wanted to make this a franchise. He wanted to do
Yes.
with this movie what Burton did with Batman.
Mhm.
And I just think taking a whole bunch of the other characters that you would have had for sequel movies and killing them in the first 5 minutes of the
That's true.
movie.
Scarring my sister for the rest of her life.
And Warren
Yeah, it's
Beatty
true.
actually bought the rights to the Dick Tracy intellectual property to make this movie, which
Oh,
is
interesting. Okay.
crazy. He still to this day owns it and teases doing a sequel to it. Like he was really, really into the making of this movie. And I think that one of the things I wanted to discuss with you in particular, especially knowing how it resonated with you, is when this came out, it was huge. The toys were
Yes.
everywhere. It was all over the theme parks. There were
Hmm.
commercials, promotion, promotion, promotion. And then it did pretty well at the box office.
Yeah.
But the cultural impact of this movie is almost nil. Like it had no cultural resilience. It didn't stay in the zeitgeist for very long. And I wonder what you think made that happen. Why do you think it didn't have the staying power, say, of Tim Burton's Batman or of some of the other things from this era? I mean, this was right at the beginning of the Disney Renaissance, so we're talking right around the
Right.
time of Little Mermaid, Beauty
Hmm.
and the Beast. How come those things stuck around and this one didn't?
I feel like thinking back on it now is that Dick Tracy was a comic that I feel like wasn't as like it was definitely a well-known comic, but it wasn't on the same level of comic as Batman, if that makes any sense. So the people who were reading Dick Tracy potentially aren't the same people who are reading just for example Batman. So Batman has this following, really big following from that. And so moving in and then having Tim Burton and everybody coming in to make Batman, it's like, okay, so this is the beginning of our superhero movies. Where Dick Tracy wasn't really a superhero, he's like a detective. So I feel like it was Dick Tracy's a very niche character. So it was like, okay, cool, everybody's going to go see this, people who are familiar with the comics. And people really enjoyed it. But because it's not a superhero, it's not the same on the same plane, I guess, as like a Batman or a Superman or any of those, that people were like, okay, cool, it's a one off kind of movie. They weren't expecting it potentially to be like where Warren Beatty wanted it to be this franchise of movies. Because it makes me wonder, like now, if they were to have made Dick Tracy now in the age of Marvel and DC and these 5 bajillion superhero movies that just come out one right after another, like would it be different? But back then, like I said, I just feel like it was this type of character, the style was just so specific.
To talk about how much they promoted this in the park, just
Mhm.
very recently, somebody shared a picture. They had Mickey Mouse dressed up like Dick Tracy on top of Spaceship Earth, and they took a picture like he was up there, like looking for bad guys.
That's crazy. It's amazing. Like they really had so much the toys. I had a ton of those toys. Like it was yeah, it was everywhere. So yeah, it just like I said, I just feel like it was just too pigeonholed in one area for it to be a Batman or a Superman or whatever superhero movies were coming out back then. And also the fact that I don't think people looked at Warren Beatty as the same kind of level of director as, say, a Tim Burton, where people are like, oh, Tim Burton is like making this, where Warren Beatty, it's like, okay, were people looking at him as he's an actor who's directing his own movie kind of deal? Kind of like Ben Affleck's Batman. Didn't he direct that Batman? And I was like, I don't know anyone who saw that Batman, so I don't know.
So one of the funny things is that when Maz and I talked about this, we recast the movie,
Mhm.
and I said who I would have wanted them to make Dick Tracy if they would do the movie again in 2025. But
Yeah,
I also said, but we all know it would just be Ben Affleck, right?
I hope not. No offense to Ben Affleck. I do love him in like Kevin Smith movies.
But
Oh,
he
that's
has that
funny.
stoic leading man,
He does.
like he looks more like the classic leading man, the Warren Beatty
Yeah,
style leading man than a lot of the other leading men that are in Hollywood now. But I just
right.
think it's funny that you brought up Ben Affleck because
It's Batman.
I was like, you know, if they did this now, that that would be
But you
him.
know what? He'd also have to direct it because it would be like Warren Beatty. Warren Beatty directed it and starred in it. So Ben Affleck has to direct it and star in it.
All right, hear me out. If you really want to just make this over the top, then you get J Lo as Breathless Mahoney,
Oh God, no.
and you get Jennifer Garner as Tess Trueheart, and he can finally make up his mind and be done with it.
Jennifer Garner would be a pretty cute Tess Trueheart though. Like I'm for that. I like her, and I would be like, J Lo is. Ah, they would have to if they made it now. They literally just have to take all that AI stuff and make Madonna from the original movie back into the new movie. They could not replace her or change her with anyone else. It would be now that we have the technology, she would have to come back as that through AI.
All right, I will tell you, however, that when we did the recasting, Breathless Mahoney was the only person where Maz and I had the same actress that we picked to play her,
Who was it?
Lady Gaga.
Oh, that would be good. I like that. Okay. Okay. I rescind my AI and I say I support that 100%. The Gaga would be great as Breathless Mahoney.
And of course, you would love her version of Dick Tracy 2025 because it's all musicals actors.
Probably, yeah. Though, yeah, I would love it. But then nobody would go see it because nobody knows who any of them are, and it would be really sad. Now I need to go listen to that episode.
So I just really, first of all, thanks for listening to all the episodes anyway.
I've been a little busy here
I
getting ready to
understand.
move.
So anyway, we're going to stop bickering because we don't have that much more time. I want to talk about how this showed up in the theme parks. And first of all, it showed up with a lot of merchandise.
Yes.
But one of the areas where it was going to appear, and I think this was going to be at back then Disney MGM Studios. I don't
Hmm.
know if there was a version that was going to show up in Disneyland or not. But there was going to be a Dick Tracy Crime Stoppers ride
What?
that was going to be the vehicle that ended up becoming Dinosaur and Indiana Jones.
Okay, okay. I was thinking more Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin, but it falls to me. That kind of falls in the same vein.
Well, it does, and there are a lot of parallels between
So many.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Dick Tracy. We're talking about adult comedy mixed in with entertainment that's good for
Yeah.
kids and um, the throwback. That was a big deal that, we're throwing
Hmm.
back to a different time.
Yes.
I think that Who Framed Roger Rabbit was weightier. You were talking about things like redlining and
Hmm.
race relations, whereas
Oh
Dick
yeah.
Tracy was basically just Warren Beatty working out if he wanted to settle down or continue to chase women.
Right. And then fight crime in between.
But anyway, I wanted to tell you about something that I don't even know if that many people remember, but I was a kid. I must have been, we went a few times after Dick Tracy had been released. So I don't know if I was somewhere between 10 and 13
Okay.
or 10 and 12. So they had an area where you could go at Disney MGM Studios and they let kids play parts in the Dick Tracy movie and they filmed it. Now, the hope was that they would sell you a $45 videotape of the little
Okay.
scene that you just acted.
Hmm.
So the scene that I got picked to play was that I was Dick Tracy. So they put me in the hat and the
Yeah.
trench coat and everything. And then there were two sisters who we had
Okay.
never met. They just happened to be in line after us. And one of them was dressed up like Breathless Mahoney, and one of them was dressed up like Tess Trueheart. And they did a scene where they would both like yank at me.
What?
And the one sister was like, "No, he's mine." And she was the one playing Breathless. And she, like, pulled me, and I went,
Yeah.
her sister, I swear, could play like middle linebacker for the Ravens. She's like, "No, he's mine." And then just ripped my arm. And you see me just go like, "Whoa." And
Oh my gosh.
somewhere, because that family bought that videotape.
Oh, so you are in someone's like memory bank forever.
Well, I'm thinking if you spent $45 in the early 90s, that's a good
Yeah, that's
hundo
a
now,
lot.
right?
That's a
That's a
lot.
good $100 bill right now. So if you spent that much money on this tape in the early 90s, you are a hardcore Disney fan. You're not going to get rid of that memory.
No.
We are now into the thousands of subscribers.
Are you here somewhere? Are you listening?
If somehow I was blonde, I was much cuter than I am now. If you have a blonde, cute kid and your one daughter was really into him, first of all, congratulations, because this was what was going to happen. But second of all, you gotta let us know. We gotta find this
Yes.
tape.
Oh my gosh, yes, we need to do like a massive hunt and we need to find this tape because oh my goodness. That's amazing. Oh my gosh. So yeah, if that's you, please contact us ASAP.
Between Diz Twitter and all of the Facebook groups and the thousands
Yeah.
of people who listen to this show every week,
Yes.
it has got to be out there somewhere.
Or if you
And
know this person who may have this tape, tell them.
first of all, it's an amazing part of Disney history that they even
Yeah.
did this event. But I remember them telling the price to my father, and he just looked at him like, "Are you kidding?"
I would have
And
been the kid in line that they made me dress like Breathless Mahoney or Tess, and I would have cried and been like, I want to be Dick Tracy. And they'd be like, you can't, you're a girl. And I'd be like, then I'm not doing this.
there was also a show where this was not recorded and sold to you, but you would just act in scenes from shows. And I got picked to be in one of the shows, and I had done it before, so I knew the shows that they had. And
Okay.
I wanted to be Woody in Cheers so bad. And looking back on it, there was no way they were going to let a 12-year-old kid serve somebody a beer at MGM Studios.
That would have been epic.
So instead, I was Gilligan.
Boo. I love it.
So, Sarah, this was such a fun conversation. It's always great
Yes.
having you on the show. And I was so happy to find out how much you loved this movie.
Oh, love it.
So, another great conversation, and we'll have you on sometime soon. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was great.